Good morning, world history. This is your Monday message from Mr. Claus. I hope those of you who celebrated Easter, the most important day of the Christian calendar yesterday, so I hope you had a blessed and peaceful Easter. And I look forward to working with you again this week, albeit virtually. So I was really thankful and impressed with how many people got involved last week, and I encourage everyone to jump in this week if you can. We're going to continue with World War One and try to put a wrap on it. And so we're going to do a little bit more with World War One. I want to get to some of the questions that you guys asked at the end of your assignments last week. And there was at least one question that had to do with each of those M.A.I.N points. So I'm going to go over those real quick. So M.A.I.N, this is an acronym that historians everywhere use to kind of remember the root causes of World War One. Let me go over them real quick. So M is for militarism. Remember, an ism of any kind is a belief. So like communism, capitalism, socialism, Hinduism, Buddhism. So militarism is a belief in military power. And some of you, I thought, kind of understated militarism. You say, oh well, it's like defending yourself if you get attacked or whatever. It's way more than that. Militarism is a belief in maintaining a really strong military, whether you're at war or not, and it's a belief in using your military action, or at least the threat of military action, as a major piece of your diplomacy. You believe in threatening other countries with your military to get what you want, and if you're not getting what you want, you believe in using that military. So it's a very aggressive attitude toward building, threatening to use, and sometimes actually using the military. So the alliance system is the next one. A is for alliance system. Now, alliances are not a bad thing. I mean, is it bad to have friends? Of course not. It's not bad to have friends. But the alliance system before World War One had a few problems. One of them was a lot of the alliances were sort of secret alliances. And so if I was looking to potentially get into a war with a country, I might add it up and say, yeah, I think it's going to be worth it. But if they have some secret alliances that I don't know about, secret alliances that might convince me not to attack them, then it's important, having those secret alliances can be a little bit problematic because I don't really know what I'm getting into. The other problem with the alliance system is that virtually everybody in Europe had these alliances, and the I guess one drawback to that is that it made it almost impossible that there would be a small war. Any war that happened was going to be huge because no matter who was attacked by who, both of those first two parties had a number of other allies who were willing to jump in and help them out. And so that's why you have a war that affects all of Europe and kills 10 million people in combat, starts as simply the fact that one Serbian shot one Austrian. But because of that, then the Russians tried to help the Serbs, and the Germans tried to help the Austrians, and they also then the French were going to try to help the Russians, and the Germans attacked the French by going through Belgium. So the British decided to help the Belgians. The Ottomans jumped in, the Japanese jumped in. Eventually, the United States joined. So this alliance system was, again, having allies is not a bad thing. But it does make it really hard for wars to remain small and under control. Okay, imperialism is another one. Most of you got that one pretty well, but imperialism is the idea that in this time, many European countries were trying to take over other parts of the world, trying to control colonies. Not so much in the Americas anymore because of the American Wars of Independence that we just studied right before this pandemic thing broke out, but in Africa and in Asia and across the Pacific. And so this imperialistic rivalry hauled Africa and Asia into this First World War, and had a lot of the fighting took place in those places, and just made what was a European war into a world war. In fact, the last fighting of World War One actually happened in Africa because there were sections of Africa that were so rural that you'd have, the 50-guy German outpost fighting the 50-guy English outpost, and they didn't get information for months and months that the war had actually concluded. So imperialism is another cause of this war being bigger and bloodier than it might otherwise have been. And finally, nationalism, again, another ism, is a belief. So belief in your nation. Now, is belief in your nation a bad thing? Of course not. But nationalism plays a couple of different roles in this particular war. One of them is that it's nationalism, sort of a hyper patriotism. So you had a lot of countries that were looking for a fight, that were looking to prove how great their country was, looking to they were anxiously anticipating war. In fact, when World War I was announced, in most countries, there were giant celebrations throughout the streets of Europe. In the capital cities, because everyone was convinced that this was a chance for their nation to show its dominance. Very different from today. I think if the United States went to war today, you would not see giant public celebrations in Washington or Detroit or New York or L.A. But in 1914, there were people were very, very pleased that this war was happening because they believed so strongly in their nation. The other factor with nationalism is kind of has the reverse effect, is that in many countries at the time, especially empires that were made up of a whole bunch of different ethnic and national and religious groups, within many countries you had groups that were trying to get out of that country. So you had some countries like Germany that had just formed and that were looking to prove their nation's greatness as a group. You had other countries like the dual monarchy of Austria-Hungary, where you had all sorts of subgroups, like Croats and Serbs and Slovenes, that did not want to be a part of Austria-Hungary anymore. When we look at Austria-Hungary, only 25% of the country was Austrian, and about 20% was Hungarian, and more than half were something else that no longer wanted to be under that flag of Austria-Hungary. And so you have some countries where the subgroups are trying to get out, trying to break up the country. You have other countries that are using nationalism, and that's nationalism too. So, like, we want a Croat nation, we want a Serb nation, and those eventually, of course, happened with Croatia and Serbia and countries like that. And on the other side, you have some countries, especially newly formed countries. Germany and Italy, for instance, had only been formed in 1870 and 1871. So these are young countries that are looking to build that glorious history that old countries like Britain and France already have. And part of how you do that is through great military conquest. And so that's what they were looking to do. Um, a couple other questions that came up. So hopefully that clarifies the M-A-I-N part for you. A couple of other questions that came up. Some people said, hey, we couldn't find what we needed on the slides. We were confused by that. You may always go beyond the slides or find behind or beyond whatever resources we happen to give you as teachers. And I hope you do. We're going to try to give you good stuff. But it's impossible that in a lesson as short as we're being asked to deliver, that we're going to give you everything you need. So please do use the internet, do some research, become a scholar. Don't just look at what we give you. But if you've got further questions, go ahead and explore those on the internet and see if you can use other sources. As far as this week's lesson, it's somewhat similar, and I think each week is going to be somewhat similar, but also your teachers are going to learn what has worked and what's not. So one thing is we're going to try a Khan Academy lesson this week, and the lesson that we're going to give you has, I think, 5 short videos. Much like last week, we're going to give you a Google Doc and ask you to make a copy of that doc, and then basically take notes on these 5 videos as you read them. Some of them are short, really short videos, like 4 minutes. A few of them are, a couple are over 10. But not too long, and being Khan Academy, you can always watch as many times as you need to. After that, there are 2 articles that we're going to have you look at. And one of them is about Hitler's first World War I experience, because of World War II is absolutely 100% Hitler's attempt to undo the results of the First World War. And so knowing how he experienced World War I can be, I think, helpful to explaining the Second War. And then the other article is about the Armenian genocide. Genocide is the intentional attempt to murder, exterminate particular ethnic group. And in the course of World War I, the Ottoman Empire, the Turks, attempted to exterminate the Turks were Islamic, and they attempted to exterminate a Christian minority in their country called the Armenians. And this also, unfortunately, very unfortunately, proved an inspiration to others who attempted genocides in the 20th century. In fact, Hitler once said, when he was planning the final solution against the Jews and other groups in World War II, he even told his men, he said, who still speaks of the Armenians? Whoever stuck with that lesson, we can get away with it because the Turks got away with it with the Armenians. I hope you have a great week. Please email me with any question. Also, just to let you know, because so many people did respond, I am somewhat behind in terms of grading and getting back to you, but I'm going to work through the oldest and get to the newest. So if I haven't gotten back to you about last week, please just be patient and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And then oh, also, I put out there a map quiz. I guess not exactly a makeup, but if you've got a really bad map quiz score, I threw out a Google Doc explaining how you can basically get rid of that score. You would just eliminate that assignment by doing a little map quiz game and getting good at it. So feel free to join us in that. As always, if you've got any questions, let me know. The last thing I want is to leave you hopelessly confused. So if you've got questions about how this is supposed to work, so do I. But let's try to figure it out together. Let me know. Have a great week. Love you guys.